Everyone is converting to Catholicism, especially persons you would least expect. For instance, meet Currie Myers, a retired law enforcement officer who worked for the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, where he would work as an undercover DEA agent investigating drug distributors. Here's a picture of Currie with long hair as an undercover agent. Now, I have said in previous conversion stories that they were the most shocking, but this one by far takes the cake, as Currie was married for 17 years to a devout Catholic woman, where he would take his family to Mass every Sunday, all while remaining a non-Catholic who was not interested in converting to Catholicism. Here's a warning. There will be some controversial topics that come up in this interview. So if you are vulnerable to sensitive topics, I would advise you to take caution. Also, please like and subscribe to support this channel. And if you would like to see more interviews like this, you're welcome. Enjoy. I presume you're a little older than I am. I'm 42, and my younger Gen Z friends call me a boomer because I don't know how to, troubleshoot technology problems. So
I'm 62, so I'm quite a bit older.
Okay. Well, wow. Again, I apologize for being a few minutes late, and I apologize about that technical difficulty there, but I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to have you on. I really appreciate you giving up some time here to come on, because I listened to your testimony. Your sister-in-law, Mary, who's she's sisters to your wife, right? Bernadette. Right. She's sister to your wife, Bernadette. Yep. Okay.
Yep. Sweet lady.
Mary and Ron, they live across the street from us. And so, I see Mary at church all the time. We talk here and there, and I've actually had her brother, the Dominican priest,
Father Andrew.
Yeah, I've had him on.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, wow. Your testimony, it's amazing. It really is.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm all here because inspired by God. It's not, you reach a point in your life where you have doors opened, and I've been very blessed. So I've had a wonderful life and career. The one thing that was missing for many, many years was a true enjoyment of my Catholic faith and a relationship with God. And it's opened so many other doors since that's occurred. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now, you're a criminologist. I think we're going to get to that later, because I think that's maybe what's really, I don't want to say sensationalizing, but it really piqued my curiosity as how that all played into this. I think there were a lot of graces that you received in your field of work that played into your conversion. But can you maybe give us a little bit of background on what you grew up as in terms of your religious affiliation, and how you met your wife, and then you have kids, and you're not Catholic? How does that all work out?
Yeah. No, I had a wonderful childhood. My mom and dad were wonderful parents, very loving. My dad was more agnostic, a very, very good man. He believed in God, believed in Jesus, but and I think that's where I got a lot of my agnosticism, not really through his fault. It's just as a the importance of fathers is extremely important. And luckily I had a great father who I could follow in everything else that he did. But the religious side, he really didn't wander back and forth. There for a while, we went to a Methodist church, and he actually became an elder in the church. And the Methodist church is a little bit different than others. It's basically sitting on the board, if you will, that works with the ministers. And he kept having many troubles with the ministers that were there, and not just him, but the board. They just kept getting bad ministers that would join and do things wrong, or not manage the parish, their parish, very well. When I say parish, that's what they called theirs. And it just sometimes would run into not be able to be very good stewards of the people. So they kept getting rid of people. And he told me one time, he said, the worst part about religion is the people, which is true.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it
There's
is
some truth to that. Come on,
yeah,
right?
it is
Right.
true. So my dad was extremely wise man, very educated. He was a civil engineer, and a geologist. So he was able to provide for us very well. He would work for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and built most of the federal flood protection lakes in Kansas and Missouri during his life, and liked it so much when he built Lake Perry, which is up in between Topeka and Lawrence. It's a beautiful lake, very Ozarky looking for Kansas. And he liked it so much, he put in to be reservoir manager and got that. So I grew up on literally a 40,000 acre federal playground of wilderness with about 15,000 acres of surface water.
Wow.
It was me and my German Shepherd. I mean, it was, we lived on they don't do it anymore. They don't require it, but back then they required the chief ranger and my dad as the reservoir manager, who was in charge of everything, to live on the site. And so I grew up right there. And my mom was a very loving mom, stay-at-home mom, homemaker, like most women were in those days. And she was very religious. Her grandfather was a Baptist minister, full-blown Baptist minister, Southern Baptist. And so she grew up, her dad wasn't a minister, but kind of part-time. And and so they grew up very, you really don't dance, you don't, you definitely don't drink, you don't do any of those kinds of things. When we moved to Lake Perry from Kansas City, I was 5 years old, and there wasn't a Baptist church in Kansas, in Perry, Kansas, where it was the closest town for us. And so we ended up going to the Methodist church. And I sang in the choir with my mom and dad. I have an older sister who's quite a bit older, so she was in my life from an early age. But by the time I got to 7th grade, she pretty much had gone to college and wasn't around. So it was just her and I. And she, a great sister, love her dearly. And but a lot of those years, it was just I was kind of an only child. And I'm very blessed with a singing voice, and so that's one of the things that got me to college. I was at K-State Singers and
Oh, wow.
performed across the country.
Wow.
We do a lot of alumni events and sing. And during the summer, we actually were employed to go. It helped with our tuition. We traveled around the country and performed in the World's Fair and all kinds of places. So I've been a singer ever since. And I do a lot of now I do a lot of singing in the Catholic Church, weddings. But there for a while, when I retired from law enforcement, I had a Rat Pack show that I did on down close to the plaza in Kansas City, and I was just good enough to have a halfway full audience every Friday night when I did my show, and didn't really make any money, but I did it I made enough money to give my pianist the everything, because he was a professional. And life is good if you have a really good piano player that can follow all your mistakes that you make. So I did a lot of Rat Pack tunes, the Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra type genre.
Yeah.
I still do that. But anyway, I had a great childhood.
Yeah. So your mom, Baptist, your dad, kind of agnostic, but he got involved in the Methodist church, correct?
Yeah.
And so that made you Baptist, going to a Methodist church, kind of agnostic, sort of, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was baptized a Methodist, but I guess I would consider myself Methodist, but I did it just because my parents, went to mass. And then at some point when the falling out occurred, we didn't go to mass. My mom continued to go to, when I say mass, I'm sorry, church.
Yeah. I got you.
The old convert in me. It just, there was a point where my dad and I didn't really go anymore. My mom always went.
Okay.
and was very involved. And I think that just affected, and it really wasn't, I didn't walk around saying I'm an agnostic. I just, it wasn't like that. But when I got in law enforcement, I started seeing so many bad things. It just, makes you wonder, what, why do we have religion if we have all these bad things that we're constantly dealing with? And I was, I had a great career in law enforcement, but I also saw an extremely large amount of problems that most law enforcement, I probably saw more just because of the kind of work that I did.
Yeah. So growing up, your family, did you guys have any exposure to Catholicism, or did you have, or did you guys, any of you, have any views on Catholicism? Was there any anti-Catholic tendencies growing up or anything like that?
Not really growing up where there wasn't any hate. The Catholic Church was, there was only two churches in Perry, and that was the Methodist, and right across the street was the Catholic Church.
Oh, okay.
And there was no ever bad things said about the neighbors right across the street. Always wondered what was going on over there, but uh, never really said anything. Now, when I converted, my mother wasn't not very happy that I converted. My dad, I didn't. My dad had passed after I converted. My dad actually had I think, a love for the Catholic Church,
Hmm.
which is very interesting. And every Christmas, he would stay up and listen to the Christmas Mass by the Pope. This is back when television, you were lucky to get 4 channels.
Mm-hmm.
But the midnight mass of the Pope and the Catholic Church was seen on television, and my dad would stay up to that. And as later, when I married my wonderful wife Bernadette, um, I promised to raise our kids Catholic and so I ended up going to Catholic Mass every week because as a father, I thought I need to be there. But I just kind of sat in the pews.
Mm-hmm.
And my dad was always, "Hey, how did Mass go?" And now my wife is, you know, uh, very Catholic and raised in a Catholic family, 10 kids, and a
Mm-hmm.
priest is among them, a
Mm-hmm.
Dominican priest. So she knew what was going on and how to explain things. But
Yeah.
but no, there wasn't really any anti-Catholic, things that came out of it. But when I did convert, my mom certainly was disappointed. And the interesting part for me is that I love studying history. Maybe that's the academic side in it, but I've always excelled at history and social sciences and things like that as a young lad. But as I started my faith journey and I got closer to thing, it was the teachings of the early church fathers that it all went back to Catholic centric activities and things prior to any other religion than the Catholic religion. And I also started doing a lot of research on my ancestors. And mention this when I speak on the issue, but found out that my ancestors came to this country in 1632, and they were on the only Catholic ship,
Mm.
the Ark and the Dove, that arrived in 1632. And this is on my dad's side,
Mm.
and they actually formed the first parish in Maryland, the colony of Maryland, which was a Catholic colony, and
Wow.
their first bishop was Bishop Carroll.
Whoa.
And all of this is documented in our family history. It's sourced and documented, and it's always been there. My dad's side did a great job of showing the Catholic heritage, but it's just I never read it. It wasn't there for me. But I think there's something in my DNA that
Yeah.
is. I felt like I was coming home when I started reading all those things, and it's amazing to me how you start to think about everything that led up to who you are today was done by your ancestors, good and bad.
Yeah.
But everything that you have today is based on the the hearts and souls of people that came before you and your family. And we don't show enough gratitude about that. We don't show enough humility. Most of us don't have no idea past our own grandfather and grandmother, maybe a great grandfather after that. And for many people, it's dead. So I encourage people to go back, and again, there's good and bad that you're going to find. But for me, I went, oh my goodness, we actually were there. We helped start the Catholic Church in the Americas, and they were thrown out of Maryland was a colony. But if you remember the Puritan Revolution that occurred prior to us being a country, the Puritans came in and violently kicked out all the Catholics of Maryland. And so they had to leave and ultimately ended up in Louisville, Kentucky, and started the first parishes in Louisville, Kentucky. And if you look back at the history of the Catholic Church, that's where a lot of Catholics went. If they were kicked out of the 13 original, colonies. And then they came back as America became a country. Some of them went back, some of them stayed, some of them moved on west, some of them went back, to the East Coast because America was a place of, for everyone.
I'm just flabbergasted because the gentleman I literally interviewed before this interview, he's around your age and he's a convert to Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
And he found out that he's related to Saint Margaret of Scotland. And then now Bishop Carroll, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was the first bishop in that colony in Maryland.
Yeah.
Now I live in Wichita and we have a high school called Bishop Carroll. Is that named after? Oh my good gravy.
Yeah. That's it. That's the man. Yeah.
Oh.
His brother was one of the founding fathers, signed the Declaration of Independence.
Oh my goodness. This is just mind-blowing stuff.
He was his brother was the only Catholic of the small band of signers that signed the Constitution. He was the Catholic representative.
Wow. Man, I feel like you're interviewing me and teaching me. This is great. This is great. Yeah. Thank you for all that. That's so edifying to know that. It's amazing. History is super intriguing, especially when you dig into it and really uncover a lot of things that you didn't know. But I did want to quickly ask you about your dad and your mom really quickly, and then we can move on. So I find it really refreshing that your dad and then some other Protestants who are at least open and ecumenical to something like listening to the papal Christmas mass or whatever, you know what I mean? Because we do live in a time and age, and we have for the last how many hundreds of years, where Protestants, whether it's deliberate or just done out of ignorance, they are staunchly anti-Catholic. They won't even touch anything Catholic. So that might have served as some grace or prevenient grace for you. I don't know. That's beautiful.
No doubt. I completely agree.
Yeah. Your mom, now when you say she was disappointed, was it just kind of like, well, yeah, I'm disappointed. I would rather you not convert, but I'll acquiesce to it and just, tolerate, and we'll be civil, or how did that work out?
Well, it didn't damage our relationship. My mom was never that kind of person. She's a very loving mother, always was, didn't hate it, but she definitely was disappointed. She wished that I wouldn't have done that. And I just think, when you're raised in a Southern Baptist family that was devout, they had ministers that, laid the groundwork. I think she probably was disappointed in herself that I didn't follow the traditions of her family and in that. But she wasn't mean, and she never, but she definitely showed her dismay over it. We didn't talk about it a lot after that. I mean, she kind of, is one of those where didn't bring up a lot of stuff, just because she's a kind person, but she definitely wasn't too happy about it. But, God gave us 5 children, and, she was able to enjoy, the gift of 5 children. And she lived to nearly 90 years old, but as far as a mother, I couldn't have asked for a better mother. And even when I converted, she continued to be a loving mother to her son. And
oh, beautiful.
So but that was the only thing where she showed any, disappointment.
Yeah. I mean, it's understandable,
Sure.
I get it.
Yeah.
I'm a convert, and all my family, they're like, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Crazy? What is this? What, I
Yeah.
mean, they're still civil with me and they love me, but
And
if you were to ask them, like, would you rather not Eric convert? They'd probably be like, yeah, you should probably stay where he is. But anyways,
yeah.
so let's fast forward a little bit to maybe tell us how you met your wife now. Because as you alluded to earlier, she is a devout Catholic. She came from a very pious Catholic family. And so how did you meet her, and what was it like, being a non-Catholic Christian, a Methodist, Baptist, or whatever, meeting her and then knowing that you have to raise your kids Catholic and then going to Catholic for however many years you went before you converted? How did that play out and look?
Yeah. We met on a blind date, and unfortunately for her, she got her sight back after, we started dating long enough. I'm just joking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
'Cause
doesn't still wish she was blind, does she? Sorry.
Unfortunately for her, I have the perfect face for radio,
Oh, no. Ooh, ooh.
No, we met on a blind date. We were set up by friends, and really religion at that point had nothing. I mean, she was very religious, but that was not any kind of genesis. I'm sure she was, I'm sure she asked, "Is he Catholic?" Because that's, she wanted to find a good Catholic man, as most people do if they're good Catholics. But uh, she had grace, and went out. You never know who you're going out with. Sometimes the date's just a date. But I found her to be a very um, a person of great faith, and had a era of class around her. Um, I was a state trooper at that time. I'd been hired in a state trooper. She was in her senior year of college. I was one of the youngest troopers hired at that time. They had just lowered the age from 24 to 21,
Mm.
and I was hired. And she was at Pittsburgh State University in her senior year, and also working part time because she grew up. Her family had a farm and ranch, and everybody had to work, and there was no easy days in the farming and ranching business, as
Mhm.
in Kansas. And so, a brilliant, every one of the kids are brilliant. They're, um, I think there's two Rhodes Scholars in the Hofer side of the family
Wow.
that has occurred. Brother, yeah, so there's some smart people in it. Some went to college, some didn't. Even the ones that didn't go to college are extremely brilliant and have been extremely successful. So she had this allure of knowing. She was confident in herself, knew what she wanted to do, what she wanted to be, who she was. She was very classy. She was a fashion merchandise major, so she dressed well, and not just well, but classy.
Mhm.
And of course, she was attractive, and that doesn't hurt.
Yes. Yes.
And
Indeed.
that's back in the day when I actually was pretty good looking myself.
Sorry.
And
No false humility here,
no
okay? Come
false
on.
humility. That's one of my problems. Is that, so, but in shape, and as I said, a state trooper. Here I come to save the day, kind of like Mighty Mouse
Mighty
Peter with
Mouse.
your hat and your hat. And naturally over time, she fell in love with me just because of the great guy that I am.
There you go. There you
Uh,
go. There you go. That's what I like to hear.
yeah,
And so you guys got married. I'm presuming at a Catholic mass
yep,
wedding, a
yep,
nuptial mass,
yep.
and the priest obviously interviews you. So, you got to raise your kids Catholic. So now, if I recall, I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but how long did you go to Sunday mass like every single week or in holy days of obligation with your wife and your kids
Hmm.
before you even really contemplated, like, gosh, maybe I should become Catholic?
Yeah. Well, the interesting part, when I asked her dad for her hand in marriage, and her mom was sitting there too, I said, I have no intent of becoming a Catholic. I said that to these very fine, just one. Bernadette's father, who's now passed, was the living example of Saint Joseph.
Wow.
That's
Wow.
the kind of man he was. I mean,
Wow.
and her mother is just as much a saint. But her dad was literally the living example of Saint Joseph. And
Wow.
so here's this guy saying, "Hey, I'm going to ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. And oh, by the way, I have no intent of becoming Catholic." Why did I even say something that stupid? I could have just let it go, but it just showed my, resilience.
Mhm.
But as we went to did marriage prep, which I hated, uh, and it wasn't because of religion. It just was so. I don't operate well in boxes. I've always had, even in my career in law enforcement, you tell me what I need to do, how to do it, I'm going to go out and do it. And, don't put me into a box. And I've done
Right. Yep.
pretty well. It's just my management style and, that kind of thing. Uh, but I did, Bernadette's devotion to her faith was probably the main reason why. And then the other one is my dad would have been disappointed if I wouldn't have spent time with my family in those wherever we're at.
Mm.
And so both those people together help form and say, listen, you don't know everything. Be there for your family. If you're blessed enough to have a family someday, be there for them. And of course, as Catholics, that's what we want to do, is have a family. So that was certainly part of it. She came from a family of 10 kids. Um, and so I said, yes, if I marry you, I will raise the kids Catholic. And I will also go to Catholic mass and be with you. Not every, marriage is not, not wine and roses all the day. I'm sure there were times where I would miss a occasional, but by and large, but especially when we started having kids, I would go to mass with them and sit in the pews and participate. And I would also participate in the church. So I was a member of the Dad's Club, not the Knights at that time, but the dads. They had a Knights, but I wasn't, Catholics. But I was the first president of when we formed the Dad's Club. I coached CYO football and basketball, and but it was all really for my children. But the interesting part is those areas of hospitality, and when I speak at parishes, the framing is about the charism of hospitality.
Mm.
The charism of hospitality is what brought me into the Catholic Church finally. It was the love of a beautiful wife uh, that I didn't know at the time when I converted. She told me after that her and the kids had been praying for St. Jude ever since
Mm.
we have started a family.
Mm.
The saint of hopeless or lost causes.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't aware of that. But she never barred me about joining the church. She was always extremely patient about it. But I was very welcomed into the church. We had a priest that was very welcoming, and it was inclusive of people who were not Catholic.
Mm.
Um, and he said, "Not everybody's Catholic, but we're going to get you eventually." It's kind of he was a good Irish Catholic, kind of a joker, and
Yeah.
had a great sense of humor. He knew everybody. Yeah, I think he had a photographic memory because he would say, "Hey, Currie, how are you? How's?" And he'd name every one of the kids. And
Wow.
this guy's serving in a parish that is pretty good size. And so the welcoming of the community. So you start hanging around. And this is what worked for me, because in law enforcement, I was hanging around too much of fellow law enforcement officers. That's never a good thing in
Mm.
your career path, because we we spend 90% of our time in law enforcement dealing with 5% of the population. So we think everybody's full of it. We think everybody's a criminal. We
Mhm.
think everybody lies to us. Uh, we see bad things and it makes us react in bad ways. Uh, and sometimes the only way to deal with it is have drinks or not be with your family and go socialize with your brother and sister fellow police officers when they're off. But the welcoming of the community, all of a sudden I had a band of brothers, if you will, that were all Catholic, that I'm going over to their house that we're spending time together. We're golfing together. And for the first time, I had really relationships outside my law enforcement brethren. And it opened the doors to me to, again, that, those steps of humility, if you will, that lead me into the church. And it's because people had been welcoming me the entire way.
That's beautiful, because I think a lot of people, Catholic priests, even clergy, they think, we have to convert through our words, our homilies, our, all this catechizing. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's all important. But like in your situation, I think that, and it can speak for a lot of other people's, it's how they make you feel and how welcoming they are and how hospitable they are. You know what I mean? Like Christ sitting with sinners, just
Yeah.
that simple presence and that radiance of love and welcoming and hospitality is beautiful. I did want to ask one question, and then we'll go right back. I didn't want to. So you mentioned that you told your wife's father when you were going to get married that you had no intention on becoming Catholic, and you kind of mentioned that, oh, why did I say that? But again, I could be wrong. I don't want to speculate, but I took it as kind of a sense of transparency and integrity. Like, hey, I just want to be upfront with you. You know what I mean? I don't want to have you guessing, or like,
Yeah.
what am I going to be doing here? Like, hey, obviously I'm not Catholic. I know how Catholic you are. You're Saint Joseph incarnate. Like, so do you, like, what was his reaction when you said that? Like, I have no intention of becoming Catholic. I'm guessing in the back of his mind, he's like, well, yeah, but you'll become one. Just give it time.
Yeah, I think so. He was a man of limited words. I mean, he showed his love in actions more than words. When he spoke, it was sage. You probably ought to listen to his recommendations. So neither one of them, in the typical beautiful way, they responded with kindness.
Mm.
They didn't. We did. They really didn't confirm or say that's okay, or it's just like, kind of nodded their head and say, well, we basically killed me with kindness and said, well, we welcome you into this family, and take
Right.
care of our daughter, and so I mean, there was no, from their point, there was no dagger eyes or any kind of flippant response, and that wasn't their, these were German Kansans, that believe in telling it like it is, but at the same time respecting other people's space. And they just, it was, I guess it was, you say it nobly by saying I did it that way, and perhaps that was on my mind. But I did think afterwards, well, that was, sometimes you can be a little too honest
Yeah. Yeah.
with people. And but I know that they loved me uh, uh, from the beginning. You felt that they don't demonstrate it again that way. That's not the kind of people they are by saying those kinds of things. But you can tell that they loved and appreciated me, and knew that I was a good man,
Yeah.
or at
And
least I was working towards being a good man.
yeah. And I'm sure you would say that the way they carried themselves and welcomed you and didn't, judge you like, oh my gosh, he's not a Catholic and he's going to be marrying our daughter. Like,
Yeah,
that served, right? That played into your conversion, I'm sure.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. No, I never heard a bad word. I never heard them speak about when you're going to convert or any of
yeah.
that. They didn't even say, "Are you getting married in the church?" They did not even go there. But I did feel a sense of responsibility that needed to be. It was important for Bernadette to be married in the Catholic Church. The church that we got married is absolutely gorgeous. I think it's one of the, probably the second oldest in Kansas. It is a huge church for the size of the community. It's I think it's one of the bigger churches in Kansas. It's not certainly in the at the Plains, the Cathedral of the Plains size, but it's big. And it took care of a family of farmers and ranchers for, probably a good 20-mile radius around the church. And they were very giving, but it was built before the state was a state.
Mm-hmm.
It was a part of the Passionists, I think, settled there and started teaching the Native Americans, and actually had a monastery there at that time. And then they built a huge church that is still there to this day.
Wow. So there is a poster right behind you. It says Dr. Currie Myers, America's Criminologist. Now, you told us that you got in to law enforcement, you became a state trooper. But I think if you're willing to share, your career turned into or you transitioned into, now correct me if I'm wrong, was it DEA or was it drug enforcement or some sort of that undercover stuff?
Yeah. So I started out, as I mentioned earlier, a state trooper, and did that for 5 years. One down in Southeast Kansas. That's where I met Bernadette. And then, but I transferred to Kansas City. And I did that because, number one, Bernadette would be able to find a job in Kansas City. She was a fashion merchandiser at that time, and it was easier to go to big city. The second reason is I had always dreamed about being a big city police officer, not in a small town. And so as a state trooper, you're pretty much by yourself. You're out, you have other troopers with you, of course, and local officers, but you are working. There's very seldom you're going to have backup. You got to figure out how to exist on your own. If things turn bad, you could get back up there, unlike a rural area where you may not have backup for 20 or 30 minutes. But I saw a lot just working in the Kansas City metropolitan area. And there was some times that, Bernadette always kind of kids me that I have the lives of a cat, because I've been able to, survive all the different instances. And you saw horrible things as a trooper, especially some of the horrible accidents that I saw. Saw 4 young girls early in the morning get struck and killed by a truck and succumb by fire. And you're sitting there, right in the aftermath of having to now investigate that, go tell the family, 4 visits to different families on what occurred. I worked a case where a fatality accident where 4 nuns were killed in a traffic accident. They were in their habits. One had her rosary still in her hand. And as Bernadette, we love to do the rosary on trips. And again, this is through Bernadette's leadership. But every time we pull out the rosary and start thinking, I go back and I think about that accident, and
I don't want to cut you off, but I just, I have three daughters. And you mentioned that horrible accident, and I know you guys have kids. How did you deal with that, where you wouldn't let it take over, where you would lose your peace, or like that traumatic PTSD stuff or whatever, like with your family? How did you deal with that?
Well, I compartmentalized everything. I never brought these things home to my family. I don't think they deserve to be. Some people say, well, you need to share stuff and all. I know I wasn't brought up that way. And being I would, at that time, I would talk to my dad, who is alive. He and I had that kind of relationship where we could talk back and forth about those things. And he would, as a good dad, he would listen. He was a great listener, which is, by the way, I encourage all, especially fathers, to be really good listeners in their family. But I don't know. I mean, I've never gone to a mental health practitioner. But as I've gotten older, the things that I've saw have affected me more. But I probably manifested a lot of that stuff, quite frankly, in bad behavior when I was younger, whether by going out and drinking or something. And, just, I think that's how I dealt with it, to be honest with you. You don't really share it with your family. You just compartmentalize it. And in retrospect, that's not the good. And we didn't have wellness programs like like today you see in law enforcement. We've seen an increase in suicides in law enforcement, like the military, because they don't have a lot of people to talk to. When I was working at DEA, I was a KBI agent after I left the patrol, which is Kansas Bureau of Investigation. Worked deep undercover. That's when I had long hair and rode a motorcycle and a big long beard. And
yeah, you might have to. Sorry. You might have. Do you have a picture of that? You might have to share that with me so I can put that on the thumbnail for this video.
yeah, I'll send it to you later. I got a picture on my bike and sitting there, and I got one on the border with my DEA partner in the U.S. military because we were involved in a border mission. So we went all over. But I was a KBI agent farmed out to DEA for 5 years.
Wow.
And I saw a lot of stuff. And in my when I speak on these issues at parishes, I talk about some of the things that I saw in order to connect people a little bit more with that conversion story. And I was in by the time I was a DEA agent, I was in the 1993 federal building shooting and bombing incident, and survived that. So it was an active shooter. The person had been arrested, and unfortunately was let out on bond by the judge. The prosecutor, and we had made the argument not to do that. When he was let out, he had spent the entire time making pipe bombs, putting together a mass of ammunition, purchased ammunition. And then on August 5th, 1993, he put his car on a trailer, drove his truck to the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office where he had been first arrested, dropped the trailer in front of the sheriff's office, activated a time delay bomb. Luckily, it did a little bit of damage to the side of the sheriff's office. Nobody was injured.
Good.
And then he drove to the courthouse, federal courthouse in Topeka, walked in the door, killed a deputy U.S. Marshal. And the federal courthouse in Topeka is an atrium, so it's open. You can, you can see all the floors. And as he came in, he started lobbing pipe bombs, time delay bombs, gravity bombs, started shooting, made his way up to the fourth floor. And that's where myself and two state troopers that I used to work with, they were angels. St. Michael sent them to me because I was by myself. Luckily, I was armed. And I went from the U.S. Attorney's Office to the stairwell and they met me there probably about 20 minutes later. And as we made ourselves up to the fourth floor to engage the shooter, he had inadvertently dropped his duffel bag full of pipe bombs and had blew himself in two, basically.
Oh,
He was still alive, and he ended up killing himself. But that ended the engagement. So that day could have, the whole time, even though I was agnostic, and I say this in my talks, I was praying to God, and here I am at, when things are going bad or you're in these stress situations, you call out to God for help and to see your family again. And, it's okay. The event's over. And then you go back to being, this agnostic guy that's, not quite there. But I mean, that it could have been a different day for me.
Oh
It could have been
man.
a different day for a lot of people if he wouldn't have set that duffel bag full of bombs, down too hard.
So I just, again, I know it's gruesome. I know it's graphic, and I don't want to, examine it this way, but
No.
you said he inadvertently blew himself up into two?
Well, no, I'm going to say blew himself up. I mean, he still was alive. So but he knew that, it was a mortal wound
Oh,
when he
okay.
put down the duffel bag.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like stuff that you see on CSI, not even CSI, stuff that you won't see on TV. This is,
Yeah.
man,
So these are the 9 lives that, occurred. And then I worked a case that was significantly hard. I'd been working this particular target for about 9 months. And that's what we do in our cases. We're dealing with higher level people. So they're not quick arrests. You work long cases on them. And I'd reached the apex of that case, and we were ready to do a buy bust. And I had met with and it was a couple, a female and male that were married. That was my source of supply to the cartels. And the cartels were active in the areas of Dodge City and Garden City at that time, pretty significantly, Mexican drug cartels. And that's where we were at. And I went to their house, and I asked for quite a bit of cocaine and methamphetamine from them for that final buy. They were okay with it because we'd been doing purchases in advance prior to that, so they knew that I must not be a cop. I mean, I've been dealing with this guy for 9 months. And so, but they left their house and went to get their source of supply to get the product. And when that occurred, they left me with their little 4-year-old boy. And I was sitting there in the crappy house that I was in, and this 4-year-old boy was just playing right in front of me. Of course, at that time, I had 3 kids. One of them was a 4-year-old boy. And I thought to myself, what kind of parents would leave to go get drugs and leave me there to watch their kid? I just, and I wasn't surprised, but at the same time, it's just like, and we ended up arresting them. Of course, the child goes, into state custody and all that kind of stuff. But it was a life turning event for me, because I went home to Bernadette, and really for the first time I shared, with her my concern. And I just feel like that and I get emotional.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good, man. I got emotional when I watched your testimony, because, and I don't want to get too personal and yap about me, but I grew up not quite as in extreme circumstances as my parents being drug dealers and neglecting me and leaving me, but there was a lot of neglect and abuse and stuff like that. So the part of your testimony that I listened to, that's the part that choked me up, because not quite, but in a sense, I was that kid. And I think, we just had a shooting at Annunciation School in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and 2 kids lost their lives. And, we could speculate for days what was going on in that man's head, the shooter, but it's stuff like this, right? Where such traumatic experiences for, you're 4 years old, drugs, your parents are neglecting you. And then I know you had that story about all those cockroaches and the feces. Maybe we'll talk about that. But, and, behind every person that, like a school shooter or criminal or whatever, there are parents, or the lack thereof. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but thank you for getting vulnerable with us.
No, and God bless you for your struggles. I had a very fine gentleman one time tell me that you can't let your past be your future and what you do. And I'm proud of you, because you've overcome a lot, but there's a lot there, and we all have different, nobody's without problems and issues. And then I think that's why the importance of, even if you're struggling in your faith, because we're all on a different path, right? But for those that are listening today, even if you're struggling and unsure, just remember that God loves you unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
And you can turn to him in whatever state you have. And he's going to be there for you. So, but in those moments, that's when I finally went to Bernadette and just said, I cannot do this anymore. I can't work these cases. So I asked for a transfer, and luckily I had gotten promoted at that time. And so God, I'm asking for a transfer, and actually, God opens the door to a promotion, which I take, and I go to the field and transfer to Kansas City. And and in the field, I'm working homicides, public corruption, police shootings, in custody deaths. So it's it's bad. I mean, it's not, it's not like I'm quitting law enforcement, but I'm getting out of that. I can look like a cop again. I'm
Mhm.
not looking like I'm in a member of the Hells Angels or something.
So-
So I mean, there was a lot of times here I am looking the way that I did, and I drive home to my house and white picket fence life and walk in the door, and I just be going, what, you know,
so how long did you work undercover?
a good 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe closer to 7.
So I
Uh,
mean,
and
you
then
you
I
had to,
worked, and then I was assigned. I was head of the clandestine lab unit for the KBI. So I was in charge of all the methamphetamine labs that were occurring at that time everywhere. Everybody was cooking methamphetamine
are you talking in the 90s?
in the 90s. Yep.
Well, I have a family member. I won't say who or even allude to which family member. Yeah, had a meth lab and went to prison in.
Yep. Well, I probably worked it.
Well,
So-
it was in Minnesota though.
oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm from. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Okay. You're
I'm
you're
from
from up
Minnesota.
north.
Yeah.
Minnesota.
Yeah, you betcha. Yeah,
Yeah, you
you
bet
should
you
come
know.
up and we'll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the dean of the School of Justice Studies in Minnesota at Rasmussen College,
Oh yeah.
and I was up there for 2 years. Great people, but I thought I knew what snow and cold weather was.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So, luckily, never moved my family, and I drove back and forth. I'd leave at the beginning of the week and drive back. But anyway, yeah. So I there's always an opportunity. Now, I saw horrible things working homicides, and again, things that added to that issue. But in 2000 is when it's interesting how the story went. But my wife was staying at home at that time. She had given up her career because we now had 3 children. She actually gave up her career after our first. But we had 3 children. Uh, she was pregnant with our fourth. We were broke. I mean, broke, man. All of our kids were in Catholic school. I'm glad for that, but it is a sacrifice. I wish more did like Wichita does, where tithing
Oh yeah.
done. I'm so proud of Wichita. I think the Catholic Church should embrace tithing, because if you build it, they're going to come, and not be kind of more of the private school model. And look at Wichita being so successful and on fire, and the number of priests that are coming out of Wichita diocese is incredible. But anyway, we were poor, and I couldn't work a side gig. It was against regulation for me to do it back then. Now, today's day, law enforcement works whatever on the side. So, but I had to do something. So I went and palletized rock. Uh, and here I was, advanced degrees, being in charge of working homicides, death investigations, very important stuff. And whenever I was off, I would go to a place and palletize rock. And that means I'd take like limestone or different types of rock and put it into a pallet, shrink wrapped it so it can go to, people's homes all over the country, and they'd ship it out there. And I'd get paid cash for the pallet of rock. And that's that's what I did when I was off.
Mm.
And because we needed, even if I could bring $100, that paid for groceries or something, just because it was tough. And but in that moment is when God whispered it in my ear and said, "What are you waiting for? I am here." And it was, and then he said, "I am with you." And so it's it was not. It was distinct. It was clear. And I had forgotten my lunch for that day, and all the other workers. I was the only really white guy that was working there. I was invited to share some food with a group of Hispanic families that were sitting around, and they offered me some soups and tortillas fabulous tasting
I bet.
stuff. And as I walked back, that's when God reached out to me, and I finished the day there. I went to mass by myself the next morning, and when Father Cullen was done with mass, Father Don Cullen is his name.
Hmm.
I went to mass and said, "Father, I'm ready to come into the Catholic Church." And he said, "Gosh, Currie, I forgot you weren't Catholic," because he's a joking priest, but it shows you how much I did go to mass. And
Absolutely.
it showed you how much I did. I mean, I was president at that time of the Dad's Club, where we, would do a golf tournament every year to raise money for the school. I was CYO coach for my kids, as I said earlier. And I had gone to uh, RCIA
Mhm.
and went all the way through it and said, "Nope, I'm not going to do it."
Why is that? Sorry.
No,
Why?
I didn't do it in this matter, but I mean, I did it about 3 years earlier.
Okay.
I said, "Well, okay, I'm gonna try RCIA," kind of as more of a, it's be a gift to Bernadette, you know,
Yeah.
to do it, and I went through it, and I went all the way through it, man. I mean, I'm talking about we're ready to graduate, I just said, "No, I'm not," and I did it because I was not called to do it. That's the reason. I was not called. And to me, converting to something, you should do it if you're called to do it. You know, you don't do it for somebody else. Uh, and so I didn't. And Father, again, through that moment and charism of hospitality, he didn't say, "Hey, Currie, okay, that's great. I'm going to put you with this person to start the RCIA program again." He could have done that. But what he did is he said, "Oh my gosh," he gave me a hug and he said, uh, "I'm going to call you later and we're going to talk about this." He called me later and he said, "Here's what we're going to do. I want you to come meet with me for the next month or so, a couple times a week." Now, this is a priest who is extremely busy. He doesn't, I mean, if you've ever followed around a priest, I've been blessed. I was the canonical investigator for the Archdiocese in Kansas City, in Kansas, for about 5 years. So I understand how busy with the things they do that we don't see,
Hmm.
you know. And this guy took his time to meet with me, and so we would go to the rectory. They have a beautiful location that is in between the church and the rectory that's all connected, and it's kind of a rooftop space. And an outdoor bar, if you will, that's small, but it's very, very beautiful. And the church there is very beautiful. And we'd sit out there and drink Irish whiskey and smoke a couple cigars, and we would talk about issues, problems, concerns that I had. Um, and everything fell into place. And we did that a couple of times a week. There was once where he took me to a Royals game because somebody was always giving him box seats or something. So I said,
Wow, this is like the coolest priest ever. Can I just
"Oh,
say that?
Father Cullen, if he walked into any place in Kansas City, people said, 'Hey, Father.'" Yeah, I mean, they knew who he was. He
Yeah.
had a wonderful reputation, but it was also he could walk into a place where there was no Christians and be welcomed. He just had that sense of hospitality about him. And so that's how I came into the church. The I didn't tell my wife. I didn't share with her any of this uh, at all. Probably not the smartest move in reality to not, not inform your wife about it. But I felt that this needed to be for me, so I came into the church quietly. I had my first confession, and then brought into the church. I had a sponsor, and Father allowed it to happen where I did it privately.
Mm.
And the next week, we went to mass. We had visited my uh, my mom at that time. We went to mass in the church right across from the Methodist church in which I grew up in Perry, Kansas.
Wow.
And as usually what would happen, I always sit on the aisle closest in the middle because I'm a cop and I need to respond to whatever bad issues are going to happen. And I'm always situationally aware, looking around for trouble. So that's where I was sitting. My wife, bless her heart, always sits next to me in mass, never apart. And she said that because you're my husband. I asked her one time, and she said, because you're my husband and I need to be near you during mass. And the children then sat by her down. So I usually would get up and I would stand out of the way as my family went by, and then I would sit back down. Well, this time I followed her and walked up to get communion, and I'm sure the entire way she was looking back, going, what in the heck is this guy doing? This isn't. I'm a little bit of a jokester, so she probably thought at first, well, he's pulling a prank. But as each step got closer, I could tell she was concerned that, what am I doing? Now, I know people go up and just get a blessing, but
Yeah.
I usually didn't do that either.
Okay.
And so I received communion, and we went back into the pews, and I told her that I had come into the Catholic Church. And
I'm trying to process this because you didn't tell your wife until after you converted, or at least received into the Catholic Church, right?
yeah, yep.
Okay. No, and I'm not judging that by any stretch,
Yeah.
What was after mass? What was her reaction? What did she say to you, or what happened?
Well, we were all teary. And the children, of course, we had some after, so not all of them, but that's when I found out later that she told me that she had been praying to St. Jude.
Yeah, that's wow. Oh yeah, don't make me tear up, man. Wow, that's praise God.
It had been doing that, those prayers with my kids forever, so prayers work.
Yes, they do. Amen. So how many years? Wow, thank you so much for sharing that and being real about it. Yeah, I because I'm a convert, so
Yeah.
we have different paths and different stories or whatever, obviously, but I can't imagine how you feel, how God picked you by name and said, I want you. I want your heart forever. You know?
Yeah.
And
I
yeah,
don't know why. I don't know why. I mean, perhaps I had a hardened heart to the part that's what I needed. I don't know. I'm thankful. For it's that. I think one of the most important things that especially men can do is accept Christ's forgiveness.
Mhm.
And I struggled with that for many years. Who am I to be loved by God? And
Yeah.
so as that struggle, even when you repent, even when you tell your sins in the back of your mind, you still, I think you focus way too much on the past. And I had a priest one time tell me, he said, Currie, have you ever forgiven yourself? Truly forgiven yourself? And I had to sit and reflect. And I go, Father, I don't, until he said that and explain why. And then he explained the fact that, just imagine if, in reflection to St. Jude, St. Jude was one of the first to accept Christ's forgiveness. And as a result, he is one of our most famous saints to this day. But
Mhm.
when he was alive, he didn't really do anything that was that outstanding at the time. It was until Christ, when Christ was alive, he was always by Christ's side. As a matter of fact, his brother, James the Lesser, was this rock star,
Mhm.
and their mother was Mary Clopas, who was at the feet of Christ's death, one of the three Marys.
Yeah, that's why Jesus doesn't have biological brothers and sisters right there.
Yeah,
Wait, yeah.
yeah,
Way
yeah,
to point that out.
yeah, yeah. And so, it wasn't until Christ came back that he sent Saint Jude to areas to be remembered. And then but his first name, Judas, Saint Jude's name is actually Judas.
Yep. Yep.
Judas Thaddeus. A lot of people don't know that.
Yep.
There's two Judases, and there for a while the church suppressed Saint Jude
Mhm.
uh, until there was an immense societal bacteriological event that occurred, that they had tried everything and they decided to bring Saint Jude out and start praying to him, and it stopped. But the priest reminded me, he goes, imagine if Judas Iscariot would have accepted Christ's forgiveness, because Christ forgave him. He may have been one of the greatest saints ever.
Yeah. I'm sorry to cut you off. Are you alluding to Father Carlos Martin?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
he came to our parish, and so like everything you're telling me, I heard him
Yeah.
like
I'm
word
a
for
I'm
word
a
say.
yeah, I'm a follower. What a great man. That's another God wink. My wife and I were visiting my son in Southern California and his family. And he goes, "Hey dad, there's a relic that's going to be at our parish tomorrow." And Bernadette and I go, "Okay, great." And it was Father Carlos, because he's in charge of the relics in they're in the United States. And he's also, of course, uh, one of the senior exorcists in the country,
Mhm.
that you can listen to his podcasts and things like that. But yeah, uh, I was able to hear that, see that, and it had a major impact on me, kind of finally going, you know what? And that's, in many ways, even though I had already converted, that was almost like a reconversion for me that occurred.
Sure,
You know,
absolutely.
I think reconversions are important for Catholics. Sometimes
Yep.
we get kind of, okay, I'm a Catholic, what else to do? And then all of a sudden, this reconversion occurred. And that's when all of a sudden I'm starting to write more. I started this podcast that I have called the St. Michael's Group Podcast.
Can you talk about that a little bit? I want my viewers to know about your podcast. Can you
Yeah.
shout that out a little more?
Sure. Well, I originally I like to write a lot, and so I do as in my criminological side, I write about current events, ethics related to criminal justice issues. So I love to write, and I've been at Benedictine College in the criminology department as the professional residence for 13 years, and so
Mm.
I teach up there and have been. Uh, but so Benedictine's another place that incredibly faith-filled formation community. I think it's one of the best Catholic colleges in the United States, probably the world.
Up in Butler?
It's up in Atchison, Kansas.
Atchison. Okay.
Yeah,
Was that the one Harrison Butker spoke at?
correct. Yep,
Okay.
yep.
Why did I say Butler? I don't know what I meant. Atchison.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's
All
all right.
right.
Yeah, and I was there. I heard that. What was going around the internet is not what he said. If you listen to his full speech, it's beautiful and
Mm-hmm.
moving.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, but so I've been up there. So I've been used to writing, and then so I thought, in my book, The Advent of Feral Man, that I wrote as an applied criminologist, the causal reasons for crime is a lack of faith, family, and formation in people's lives. There's ancillary reasons that could be poverty, race, um, observational learning that occurs, by us all. Those are ancillary. But if you're grounded in faith, if you have parents and you have family that can reinforce the faith and form you correctly through your years. And so that's the importance of formation, not just academic education, but education of the soul and mind, and civics, how you treat people, how you treat the opposite sex. All these things are important roles. If you're missing those things, it makes life more difficult for you. And it's easier to open yourself up to Satan's folly, who's alive and well. And then on top of it, we are born with original sin. So we are sinful from the time we're born. If we're not formed correctly, then we can follow those sinful acts even more, as we all do. And some do it even to a higher extent as a result. And so when I wrote that book, I did a chapter on the importance of faith, family, and formation. And I decided to turn that into a bigger, so I'm writing a new book that centers on that. And I decided to use the St. Michael's group as the vehicle, if you will, to have those writings out already, even though I'm going to put them into a book, but I would do it through a podcast. And I enjoy what we do, what we're doing here. And I can tell you do too. I enjoy doing this kind of stuff. And I love the fact that we can have a long discussion, because when you have a 5 or 10 minute, interview, I do a lot of radio and television, and it might be a 7-minute interview and you're not able to get into details about anything. But I take different areas of faith, family, and formation and focus it especially towards fathers and men. And so that's what I write about. So every Friday, I just released one today on the importance of fathers. Their number one responsibility is to get their family to heaven. That's their number one responsibility. And so I write about a different topic. And the genesis of that topic is something that happens to me that week or the week before, and I'll put it on a notepad and say, this is what I want to talk about. It's because I either hear something, I do something, I might be at mass and something's said by the priest that I want to expand upon, or I see something in the world, and that if as long as it fits into those 3 pillars, then I put it out. And it's free. It's stmichaelsgroup.substack.com. It's also on Spotify. And I started out, 1, 2, 3 people, 15 people. I think I have maybe 55 or 60 people
Nice.
that now do it to it. And it's just going to be a natural growth of, I don't really advertise other than doing these kinds of things. I talk about it. I have a radio show that I do every week in San Bernardino that's on criminology. But when I'm doing commercials, I say, hey, if you want to listen to this. And then I'm also on Catholic Speakers. So if people want me to come speak at their parish, Catholic Speakers has accepted me into their bureau. And they can reach out to me there and be able to schedule me to be, and I'll go anywhere in the country. I want to, I want to talk about my issues, my life, and I'm pretty much an open book. And so that's, it's my time to share, my story. But I just did the Eucharistic conference and for the Salina Diocese that was at Fort Hays State University earlier. And that was great. It was a men's breakout only, but I can do a parish, I can talk about for everybody to attend. If you want it to just be men's, I'm happy to do that as well. But for me, as I'm getting older, that's my next mission is to do that.
Yeah. I will drop a link to your podcast, your Substack, and everything in the description. So then people can just check that out, click on that.
And feel free to forward it, if you are listening, feel free to forward to somebody who's struggling, or, and maybe it'll be a connection with some of the things I'm talking about. Maybe not, but it's worth a shot. But I do appreciate that. I'd like for it to grow. Maybe be as popular as you are someday.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Okay. No, people say that. Like I had my nephew say, like, you have 17,000 subscribers. And I'm thinking about some Gen Z guys, like 20, 22, and they have over 100,000 subscribers.
Yeah.
I'm just like, all right, well, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, there's
It's
that
all, yeah.
influencers are amazing. But anyway, I appreciate that because you do have a large audience that is large to me, and it's just going to help spread the word, and I'm very grateful.
Oh, absolutely. It's a blessing and a grace to be able to do that. I'm just so thankful and grateful that you came on and shared. You became vulnerable with us. I think a lot of people will be edified and uplifted through your testimony, right? And
Yeah.
then just how transparent you were with everything. So I thank you so much for spending an hour, a little over an hour with us, and man, I just I can't wait to see you with the long hair and
Yeah, I'll send you all those so you can see what I look like back in the day. And it was fun. I had a great career, and I wouldn't, of all the issues and problems, I wouldn't change it. I just wish I would have had my faith life in order better. But if I'm here doing things like this today because of that journey, and maybe I think we touch more people now. You and I think we touch more people because of that journey. Those are
absolutely.
that's the doors have been open. So I'm going to embrace it and go with it, and love it. But again, it's a God wink because you reached out to me because you heard about me somehow, through my sister-in-law, of course. But I mean,
Yep.
you took the step and time to reach out, and I appreciate that. So it's funny how all those things work.
Of
And
course.
happy
I
to
had
come back
to.
again if you ever want to talk about, I can, if we have issues, or you talked about active shooters, I can come back and explain the genesis and the problems associated with that. Because I study those things. So if you ever want me to come back and we can spend time about problems in society, uh, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I might take you up on that. I actually, I kind of went off the normal path of my channel, because I'm usually like interviews like this, apologetics, theology, whatever. And I actually made a video on why the Annunciation school shooting happened. And it wasn't really, Christian apologetics. It was more of a kind of like a criminology type video. Maybe I'll send it to you and you can pick it apart and disagree or tell me where you disagree.
Oh, that'd be great. I'd be happy to. And then, yeah, but I'm happy to come back on because I think people need to understand. And I study school shootings. I study a lot of different things, but I know the causal reasons why. I'm also crime prevention through environmental certified. I've been that for 25, 30 years. So I know about focused deterrence. I know about force protection. I know how to build the right facilities. I do help Catholic churches and schools with coming up and consulting with them on protections. And I've had quite a few reach out to me there. I don't market a lot because um, it's something I don't feel right marketing about things that happen and say, hey, I'm here to help.
Right.
If you want to deal with it, but I am that person that can help build a appropriate facility or remodel, or most of the things are actually because of human error. But we have to understand why these occur, and I can explain to people why they are occurring. And it goes back to we have left God out of our lives, including in our mental health. Um, and we've abandoned the vast majority of people who have had mental health needs. And I have made the argument for years that we have become a society of enablers and not treaters. And so we'll enable somebody if they say that they're having gender fluid identity issues. We will, the common practice has been to enable them and say, you're okay, I'm okay, and not get them the help that they need.
Right.
And then all of a sudden we have seen an increase. It used to be that 98% of school shooters were male, um, between the ages of 14 and 20. Uh, some were older. I'm talking about school shootings, but just in the last few years, it's now down to 94%. And the largest second percentage is now associated with transgenderism. So we've seen about 9 to 10 school shootings that have occurred of people who are transgendering or did transgender. And then we're seeing the demographics change to those individuals are generally in their 20s to older 20s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're picking Christian and Catholic schools.
Yeah, I remember the Nashville shooting. That was a female that went to school
Yep.
there at
Yep.
that Christian school, and no good, no
Yep.
good. But yeah, Currie, it's been a blessing, man. It's been a tremendous blessing. I thank you so much for coming on, and yeah, we'll keep in touch. We'll try to hash some more stuff out maybe in the future with school shootings and stuff.
Sounds good. I appreciate you. God bless. Thanks for all your work.
All right. God bless you, Currie, and have a wonderful day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.